Thank you for joining us for the first session of 2023 for New England Chapter Connects. My name is Tom Modzelewski, and I'm a co-chair of the New England Chapter Education Committee. I'd like to thank everybody for attending today's session, Innovations for Resilient Municipal Infrastructure, a Holistic Approach, as Regina mentioned. And a brief highlight of what the session is going to entail is in this pursuit of promoting innovation in municipalities. This presentation will explore transformative solutions addressing critical challenges faced by urban infrastructure, including discussion on alternative materials such as composites. The four main areas of focus are storm surge resistant manhole frames and covers, dual seal watertight manhole assembly for potential flood events, a self-leveling manhole assembly, cast iron detectable warning surfaces. This presentation will underscore the importance of modernizing legacy specifications and implementing an effective evaluation method for new technologies. There will be a time at the end for questions where you can unmute and join in. Additionally, we'll be monitoring the chat throughout the session, and we'll compile a list for the end of the presentation unless something seems pertinent where we will interrupt the presentation. Just a couple of things before we get started. First, many thanks to our Public Works Awareness Committee, the PWAC, the New England Chapter Education Committee, and the subcommittee that puts these sessions together. These groups work extremely hard to promote the value and importance of public works and provide interesting, informative, and timely learning opportunities for our members. Also, a big shout out to the entire team at the Connecticut T2 Center. They do an amazing job producing and supporting our New England Chapter Connects program. And of course, special thanks to our APWA New England Chapter sponsors. Without the support of our sponsors, we could not bring all the valuable programs and events to our members and the public works community. The New England Chapter Connects program was created to keep us all connected or stay connected and informed while we were isolated during COVID. And it still exists today because of the success it has received. It has even received national recognition. We have upcoming sessions on April 25th, May 23rd, September 26th, and October 24th, and November 14th. So please join us for the future fantastic topics. We hope that you will find these series worthwhile and informative as we continue to stay connected. And please help us help you by completing a very short survey via the QR code at the end of the session. Also, if you miss a session or would like to replay a session for your staff, all of our New England Chapter Connect sessions can be viewed on the chapter website and also on YouTube. Without further ado, let me introduce our host for today, Craig Coggins. He's the Eastern Regional Technical Sales Director at EJ. He has a Bachelor of Engineering in Industrial and Systems Engineering and a Master of Business Administration. Craig acts as the vital link between sales, marketing, product development, and engineering teams by meticulously reviewing state and local specifications, ensuring adherence to industry standards, and collaborating with agencies to drive enhancements and introduce new products to the market. Welcome, Craig. Thank you for taking the time to join our discussion today, and this session is now yours.
All right, thank you, Tom, and good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's having a great day today. We certainly appreciate the opportunity. We're a big supporter of APWA, so we appreciate the opportunity here. Special thanks to Regina, Tom, and Vanessa for all your help this morning. Also joining us, we have Brian Stites, which is my manager. He's our Northeastern district manager, so he's just kind of online there, depending on what some of the questions are. Sometimes you can help out with some of the local questions in terms of if it's something specific with the New England market. So Brian, appreciate you being on there. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Okay, I assume that can be seen by everybody. Okay, thank you, Tom.
Yep, looks good. Yeah.
Appreciate that. All right, so again, this presentation is titled Innovations for Resilient Municipal Infrastructure. One of the things that at the last minute I wish I would have done was just put up a slide of just a standard, classic, traditional manhole frame and cover, because that's for the most part what we've been doing for the last 120 years is developing cast iron manhole frames that sits on top of your structure, and then placing a cast iron cover in there, and that's pretty much the extent of historically the access points for a lot of your underground infrastructure. So but things change, different things happen, different needs arise. You start learning actually what it's like to use the products that we make. So we try to design in some extra features, come up with new products that will help enhance the infrastructure, provide ergonomics and safety, deal with specific things that are just going on out there nowadays. So those are some of the things we're going to talk about today. EJ has been around for 140 years now, since just last year, 2023. They were started back in 1883. So we're going to do just a quick little introduction, give you a little background of who EJ is, just a snapshot of our product range. Like I said, we've been around for 140 years. So there's a lot of things that we do, but we're only going to touch on just a couple of examples today. There's only so much you can put into a 50-minute presentation. So we're going to target some of the newer innovative designs that are out there to address some of the modern needs and requirements that are out there in a lot of the municipal applications. So, and then if it works, I was just going to switch over real quick just to share some website resources where you could find some additional information on our website. As you're working on your projects, I assume there's a lot of maybe some consulting engineers in the audience, some municipal people. If you've got some specific applications and you want to delve a little bit more in depth as to what we do and what other types of innovations that we have out there, I will try and switch over and show you where you could find a lot of that information. So like I said, just a quick introduction. I already mentioned EJ has been around for 140 years. They started back in 1883 in a little town called East Jordan, Michigan, largely servicing the lumber industry. They basically cast machine parts, ship parts, other castings for the agricultural industry, until that is largely because of the booming lumber industry at the time. When that started to kind of die off and taper off around the turn of the 20th century, that's when EJ switched gears and starting at that point began to make municipal castings, waterworks valves, and fire hydrants. And that's been our primary focus ever since, basically cast access solutions. And then we've gotten into some other materials just to try and, make sure we're keeping a pulse on what our customers' needs. We love iron at EJ, but sometimes iron isn't what's needed for the application. So we'll get into a little bit of that as we go on. We're a global leader in the design, manufacture, and distribution of what we call infrastructure access products. But where we are in North America, these are our manufacturing sites. We have a new foundry, our new East Jordan foundry, started in production in 2019, I believe, 2018 or 2019. That's located just outside of East Jordan, Michigan. Our new Syracuse fabrication plant, that's where I mentioned Brian Stites earlier, that's where his office is. Just north of Syracuse, they focus primarily on fabrication of aluminum access hatches, a lot of custom underground utility vaults for a lot of big utility customers. We really specialized in the customization of those types of products. We do a lot of steel frames and grades, depending on the state you're from. Well, I know, Connecticut, perfect example. All of your inlet structures are welded steel fabricated frames and grades. A lot of other states still have those requirements. So we also do a lot of that type of work in the Syracuse fabrication plant. Shifting down to the bottom there in Salt Lake City, Utah, it's another division of EJ, which is similar to the Syracuse fabrication, but they just handle a lot of those products out west. Then you've got Youngstown, Ohio. We manufacture riser rings for paving projects. The distribution facility in Sunfield, Michigan, that's primarily where everything produced in our East Jordan foundry will go to be stored in Sunfield, and all of our sales branches on the eastern half of the United States can pull their material in from that distribution facility. We also have a foundry in Ardmore, Oklahoma, and that's our main distribution facility right there on site with that foundry. And finally, in Muskegon, Michigan, we're going to talk a little bit more about composites later on. That's where we manufacture a lot of our composite access products. Just a quick snapshot, like I said, right around the turn of the 20th century, that's when we switched gears and got into focusing on DOTs and municipalities primarily. And then getting into other materials such as composites. You know, I mentioned fabricated products, aluminum hatches, steel frames and grates. We do streetscape products. We do fire hydrants, gate valves. We have a full line of products for ports and airports as well. So let me see if I can switch over real quick just to show you some of the website resources. Primarily this one button here. If you went to ejco.com, we have this button here, the third one over, Resource Center. There's a tremendous amount of information. You can get, you know, any of our literature here. You could download it in a PDF format. It's all of our catalogs and brochures. You can kind of scroll through there and see what you're looking for. With product briefs, there's information on product features, there's case studies, a lot of videos. I'm going to show a couple of videos today, but you can find those, you know, right there in that section as well. So I just want to jump over there and point that out for you so you know where to find additional information if you need it. Okay, so jumping right into it. Oops, let me go back here. So the remainder of the presentation, like I said, is going to be talking about, you know, innovative access solutions for municipal infrastructure. Like I said, I think one of the things that we've done a pretty good job of, you know, at least our leadership, is recognizing the importance of getting out there in the field with our customers and finding out what exactly it is like to use the products that we make. So, and in doing so, we've learned a lot of stuff. You know, we start seeing where people struggle to use the types of things that our industry produces. We see other kinds of applications that are out there that really needs a solution rather than just a traditional manhole frame and cover. So these are the things that we try to take back to our product development and come up with some items that will address those things. Then I wanted to touch on curb ramps for the Americas with Disabilities requirements and look at material performance and what does ADA say about that, what's available out there in the industry, and just kind of touch on that particular aspect of it. And then we'll just conclude with, you know, the importance of modernizing municipal specifications. And I'll just kind of go through that when we get there. So like I said, there's a lot of things that we do. Being around for 140 years, there's only so much we could show in a 50-minute presentation. So I just want to touch on 3 or 4 specific innovative products that are available out there to address specific things that are, specific applications. Storm surge, this is actually the name of this particular product, but it's really what it addresses, you know, what happens at a manhole location during a storm surge. You know, when you have a lot of different drainage structures and maybe a couple of points in that particular municipality where they tend to converge and you get a heavy downpour, or, you know, maybe the effects of a Hurricane Sandy coming up the coast or something. Typically, whenever I start talking about this and I'm face to face with a municipality, I can usually catch 1 or 2 people in the room. They start shaking their head like they know exactly where they have the problem. So I should have clicked this a second ago while I was talking, but I wanted to give a good example here of what happens when you do have those types of events. You notice there's a manhole structure right there in the center of these 4 lanes. And this is what can happen. And the reason I'm letting it go here is because I want you to see, laying right there in front of that pickup truck there, you can kind of get a sense of just how big that manhole cover is. I know we make some pretty large ones. Just looking at that, I'm guessing it's probably like a 4-foot clear opening. So the manhole cover itself is probably, 50, 52 inches in diameter. And this video just keeps going because it's not done yet. This thing will erupt again shortly after the gentleman in the pickup truck is getting out there, probably inspecting the damage, if anything, in the front of his truck. Now, one thing I like to point out here, just something to keep in mind, obviously this is a problem because now you got a manhole cover right in the middle of one of the lanes. But thankfully in this scenario, the actual structure itself is located in between those 2 Jersey barriers. Most cases, that's not what's going on. Those manholes are usually right in a wheel lane. You saw a tanker truck go down the road there a few seconds ago. You can imagine if you've got a 48-inch diameter gaping hole in the middle of your road and along comes a tanker truck, and he's not seeing that. So it is certainly a problem. It doesn't take a whole lot of pressure. You'd be surprised what it takes to start to dislodge a manhole cover. So then you've got the issue of, like I said, an open hole in the middle of your roadway, which could cause vehicular damage, maybe, some bodily injury or worse. So it could be a problem, not to mention just the simple fact of the additional cost of now you got to send a crew out there to locate the manhole cover and put it back in place. So one of the things that we've developed is just for those specific applications is a storm surge assembly where you have a manhole cover where it's anchored at the backside of the frame on a hinge point. And then you've got a large arm that hangs down into the structure. So if you do have that type of an event, which would typically dislodge a cover, it will push this cover open to, I think it's like 15 to 17 degrees. It will allow that energy to dissipate. But then once that subsides, the cover is just going to shut right back down into the frame where it's supposed to be. So you're not left with a hole in the middle of the road or, other potential catastrophes there. And when you do have maintenance crews that need to get in there, sometimes I forget to address this, but the question does come up, well, how do you get it open? If you see this, well, both pictures there, and the little black spot there, that's a plastic cap to protect the opening for an optional security bolt. I say optional because this is designed to function with or without the bolt. That's really just, having an option there to make sure unauthorized personnel doesn't get into your structure, but it will operate without the bolt. But anyway, to get in there, you just have to remove the bolt if it is in there. Just get a standard manhole hook or something. There's a little divot right behind the square portion in the top of that arm. You just hook that, pull it up, and you have a picture next slide. Oh, maybe not. I'm sorry. But you pull that arm up and back, and there's a hole there where you could put a screwdriver or something through there just to hold that arm up. And then you could open up that cover and your maintenance crew can get down in there and do whatever they need to do. So one of the things I like to do is, I get done showing one particular design that allows water out, and then I jump to something else where you don't want anything getting out or in. So we'll talk about watertight applications for a few minutes here. So we've developed a manhole frame and cover assembly called a duo seal, primarily as the name indicates, because it has 2 gasket seals. If you can see there in the cross section, it looks like a traditional manhole frame and cover, but the big difference is where this thing seals together. It's not just a flat bearing surface on the frame and the underside of the cover. You actually have these iron fingers that interlock together once the cover is put in place, where both of these gaskets are compressed with the perimeter bolts that are in drilled and tapped blind holes so they don't go all the way through. And what our engineering group wanted to do was to design something that would take a tremendous amount of internal pressure, because there are a lot of applications out there that could potentially be in floodplains. There's some low-lying areas. There's, especially nowadays with, potential effects of climate change. People along the coast are worried about, a lot of the low-lying areas are starting to see more flooding. And it could become a big issue if you get a lot of water inside these structures, depending on what the application is. And that's one of the things that we've been exposed to over the years, is whenever somebody starts asking for a watertight solution for their application, we've kind of discovered that that term watertight is somewhat subjective, depending on who's asking and what the application is. So one of the things that we did, this is just an internal list. It's not an industry standard, but we just wanted to be able to start putting a number to certain levels, as we're having a conversation with, whether it's an engineer or a customer or a distributor, what exactly are you looking for? So they came up with these 8 levels of watertight. Level 1 just being a traditional gasketed manhole frame and cover, with a compressed gasket, either with just the weight of the cover or a bolted cover. No testing has been done there. There's no pressure rating. So pretty much anything with a gasket and typically a bolted cover, we'll just call that a level 1. Then at level 2, they started with using a half atmosphere of pressure, which works out to about 7.35 PSI pressure internal. You can see there on the left, that's our little testing apparatus that they developed, so we can put different frames and cover assemblies on this machine and actually test it and see how much pressure it will hold before it begins to lose pressure. And then with each level, you can see we bumped it up another half atmosphere of pressure. You can see the PSI rating conversion until we get to a level 8, which is a tremendous amount of pressure, especially internal. I mean, that's the worst case scenario, rather than just the weight of water sitting down on top of the cover, we're talking internal pressure. So that's how we test these. So they wanted to develop something, wanted to make sure we had something at the top of that list. And that's exactly what this Duo Seal is designed to withstand, that level 8 or that almost 51.5 PSI, which equates to about a little over 118-foot head of water. That's quite extensive. I'm not sure when that's going to happen, maybe after all the polar ice caps melt, but the bottom line is we have something that will address pretty much any application that's out there. This is just a picture real quick. I worked with an engineer out of New York City that specified this product on a job down in Region 10, down on Long Island. We actually got a note back from that engineer asking if we can just go through the process and get this DOT approved, because they anticipate a lot more applications like this, especially down there on Long Island, along the coast, and probably, up along the FDR. Just, I'm sure Hurricane Sandy is always going to be fresh in the minds of a lot of people out there for quite some time. So I did submit that to the DOT. We do have New York State DOT approval on that particular item. One of the things that I included, I actually worked with some people, some industry partners over at ConSeal, because the question kept coming up, okay, how do you seal this thing to the structure? So I worked with the people over at ConSeal, and using a couple of their products, we put together this recommended specification for sealing the frame to the concrete structure, which is good for maximum 10 PSI pressure, which equates to 23-foot head of water. And then I've got a note in there, anything beyond that, up to the design pressure of that Duo Seal, which is, 51.5 PSI, an alternate method should be developed. But, when are you going to need that? Like I said, this is good for 23-foot head of water. So just out of curiosity, I did some Googling. I've mentioned Hurricane Sandy a couple of times. I want to know what were the worst hit municipalities during that catastrophe. And as you can see, the bottom 2 there, Jamaica Bay and Rockaway Inlet. Both of those saw almost 12 feet of water. I mean, that's a lot of water. But my point is, we've got an access assembly that's designed to take 118-foot head of water. We've got a recommended sealing method to the concrete structure, which is good for, almost twice what those two municipalities saw during Hurricane Sandy. So that is the whole spiel on the watertight side of it. I don't know if anybody had any questions so far. Anything I need to stop to address? We doing okay?
Nothing in the chat yet.
Okay. All right, I'll just move on here. Okay, continuing on talking about, addressing, products for resilient municipal infrastructure. We hear a lot of talk about sustainability nowadays. Every time I go to some sort of whether it's an APWA show or similar types of shows, there's always a talk or presentation about different types of, people trying to develop new asphalt system, more sustainable asphalts. And one of the issues that could possibly help the sustainability of an asphalt road surface is, your access points to the infrastructure. I would assume anybody with a driver's license can understand this picture. I mean, depending on where you're at, I'm sure your typical routes to and from work or the grocery store, you probably know which ones you're going to swerve around because it's just not good for your car. And this is a problem that has gone on for years and years. If you think about, I mentioned the past earlier a couple of times. If you think about what we've been doing for the past 100 or so, 120 years, wherever you have a manhole that you have to get into and you need an access point, historically, we've taken a cast iron frame and a cover and you set it on top of that structure, and then you pave up to it. Now you've got two separate entities. You've got your cast iron access point in the middle of your road, and then you've got your paved road surface paved up to it. But once that casting is set, that's pretty much where it stays. But then what happens when winter comes? And temperature gets really cold, your asphalt starts to move. You've got freeze thaw cycles. That asphalt will heave and settle. But if that iron isn't moving, you could see what kind of problems that, typically starts going on around that structure. So a great solution is what we call basically a self-leveling manhole frame and cover assembly. You've got an additional frame here. The lower frame looks like a traditional manhole frame. The only thing that's missing is the seat where the cover usually sits. Now all that is just a guide frame. Its sole purpose is just to guide the upper frame, make sure it's centered so you have the full range of motion. It's designed to tilt 5 degrees in any direction. So now you've got something to address, the pitch of the road, the cross slope, and then the upper frame and cover actually gets embedded into the paved road surface. So now you've got your access point that's an integral part of your paved road surface. And when you do have those freeze thaw cycles, that upper frame and cover as part of your road now will move with it. And that will protect your road surface. So I'm just going to move on here because I got a little video coming up. You'll get to hear a couple municipal people from upstate New York talking about what they think about it. I mean, I could sit here and talk about the stuff all day long, but it's nice to hear what somebody else thinks about it that's been using it. So I'll just go ahead and jump to that. I did want to mention though, it's not new technology. It's not too many people wants to be the first horse out of the gate with something new and fancy, but this type of technology has been around for quite a few years, used over in Europe quite a bit. This is pretty much all they use up in Canada, I believe. I think those two lower pictures are both Canadian units. The lower right picture is one that was typically used all through upstate New York, but it was sourced from Canada over the years. So probably the past 20 years or so, we've just, finally developed our own, and it's seen a lot of success.
Upgrade your streets with
Sorry, I failed to give you more lead in, but anyway, here's the video. I'll just let this play so you can get a better sense of what exactly it is and what it does and some of the results there.
the self-level access assembly, engineered to keep manholes flush with the pavement, so your roads stay smooth. If a manhole frame is not properly installed and adjusted, it can result in sunk and broken asphalt or concrete around the manhole. Traditional methods of resetting or replacing manhole assemblies can be costly due to labor, materials, and equipment.
With the freeze-thaw cycles, we were getting deterioration of the asphalt in the surrounding area. It was very time-consuming to install the traditional manholes for repairs.
Adjusted manholes might look good from the start, but could crumble if the frame is not properly supported.
The mortar that's underneath them will give out from the salt water. You know, the salt in wintertime gets in there and dissolves them, makes them tilt and they sink in the ground.
The self-level access assembly reduces site deterioration around manholes caused by frost heave, uplift, and settling, which improves drivability to meet smooth street initiatives. The two-frame assembly moves to remain perfectly aligned with the finished road surface. It features a guide frame that facilitates self-centering and keeps the upper frame centered over the manhole structure. The upper frame is supported by and moves with the road surface. This floating effect helps prevent road damage and protects the infrastructure underground by dispersing traffic vibrations and shock throughout the road surface, rather than into the structure below. The multifunctional seal helps keep the upper frame centered with the guide frame and reduces water infiltration. During installation, the bottom guide frame is set, and then the upper frame is set and adjusted as asphalt is laid and packed underneath it. This product saves contractors time because it eliminates the need to go back to reset manholes.
What I like about the self-levelers, which I've touched upon a couple times, is the ease of installation. They go in fast. We can basically prep a half a dozen manholes in a given area and go back through and install these within a matter of hours.
The assembly has a range of motion of up to a 5-degree tip angle while still moving with the road. The self-level access assembly can also be used for retrofit applications. The concrete version includes a steel sleeve and adjustment brackets to help facilitate installation. Existing manhole covers are interchangeable with the self-level access assembly. Multiple frame openings and heights with varying minimum and maximum ranges of movement are available, as well as special lettering, custom logos, and security bolding. The Ergo Self-Level combines the ergonomic and security benefits of the hinge cover with the roadway leveling benefits of the self-level frame. A self-level valve box riser is also available.
As these units are more of a set it and forget it type unit, I would say it's cut down on us having to patch or revisit areas that we've already made repairs in.
Nothing to do after you install them, you know. I mean, once they're in, they're good. That comes out with the road perfectly.
I would definitely support other communities looking into this avenue for, you know, either when you're paving or doing repairs and retrofitting on streets.
Choose a self-level access assembly to improve drivability and reduce your maintenance costs.
All right, so, you know, like I said, the video does a really good job of explaining what it is and what it does. We do have some approvals, PennDOT, New York State DOT, Florida several years ago, they included it in their standard sheet for their manhole assemblies. North Dakota DOT, the video mentioned the concrete version. North Dakota has a lot of concrete roadways, I think largely due to the heavy truck traffic, the oil and gas industry out there. So they specified the concrete version. Maine Department of Transportation has approved its use under special provision, and I'm currently working on some of the other DOTs. It's an item that really does exactly what it's designed to do, and a lot of users are really appreciating the benefits that they're getting from it. I'll just roll through just a couple of slides. Like I said, the video did a pretty good job, but I just want to give a couple more examples, just getting to actually see it, a few years down the road, and the results kind of really drives it home. Watertown, New York, first installation we did was back in 2013. You can see in the upper right is the unit that was taken out of there to put the self-level in. And then in 2015, the lower left, that's just 2 years after installation. And then just last year, that's what it looks like. Still looks that good today. So they watched it for a few years and they were really impressed. And now they've come back and they started buying a lot more of them. Baldwinsville, New York is a great story. I think they put in about 50 or so of the self-level units. But you can see the other unit there in the back of that picture is a Verizon unit. So Verizon was taking care of their own structures, either setting new traditional frames and covers or resetting what was there, with basically the same result that you saw on my first slide in this section. Even right after the project was newly completed, you could see there, and I've been out on job sites. I know the contractors are trying to do the best job that they can to match the pitch and the cross slope of the roadway and, get it flush. You have to worry about all of that first before you pave up to it. But it is still a challenge. Like I said, every road surface is not flat, so they have to do what they can to try and match that. But you can see right in front of there, the difference between a self-level installation. Like I said, this project was completed in 2016. This is the same project. My little Zoom menu bars across the top there. I think the date was 2018. So I think the top two pictures is just a couple of years after they were installed. On the left, there's a self-level. On the right is a Verizon unit. And then the bottom picture in 2021, same two manhole structures. So we're looking at, 6-7 years after installation. And more recently, just I think back in September, October, I took these pictures here. Same two structures, but just, I ran across the street to get both views. So again, the project was completed back in 2016. Both of these manhole castings were installed the same day. You can see the difference between the self-level unit, which, like I said, basically becomes part of your road surface, versus a traditional manhole frame and cover. So the proof is in the pudding, like they say. And lastly, just, in case nobody's asked yet, the question typically comes up because they see an extra frame, what's the cost? They are more expensive. We could address that more specifically if somebody has that question, but we do another presentation for the state of New York for PDH credit that just talks about this particular item. And we have a whole section that goes through all the stories of the different municipalities that are using them. And I notice it's the same story every time. The first slide shows, they start off with 1 or 2 or 3. In the case of Elmira in New York here, in 2015, they decided, okay, we'll try them. They bought 7 of them. We helped them put them in. They were happy with the result. So the following year they came back, they bought another 30. We offered to help again, and they said it's pretty straightforward. Once they figure it out. And that's the other thing that a lot of the feedback we get is they feel like they're saving money right up front, because they realize it's kind of counterintuitive, even though there's an extra piece there. They're realizing that once they get this down pat, that the installation is about half the time as a traditional frame and cover, because you don't have to mess around with trying to get it, precisely to grade. You just get it close and then let the asphalt and the rolling machine do the rest. And then the following year, they came back and bought another truckload. So I believe this is all that they're using now in the city of Elmira. And there's a lot of other municipalities. It's pretty much the same story. New England, since we're at the New England chapter of APWA, I figured I'd just throw this up here. We are having some success in New England. Looking at trying to get some DOT approvals up there. I mentioned Maine earlier, so it is We are seeing a lot of success with this particular product. It's definitely saving a lot of money. Like I said, helping with the sustainability of the road surface quite a bit. All right, with that, we're going to move on to the next section. Any questions so far? I had to say that so I can get a drink of water real quick. All right, we mentioned different materials. Like I said, we've been around for, a lot of years. We started off as a foundry. We love iron, but we also understand that, other materials may be better suited for the particular application. So we do manufacture composite manhole frames and covers in Muskegon, Michigan. That's just a picture of the plant there. Some of the advantages of composite products: safety and ergonomics. I mean, that's a big one. Reduction in work-related injuries, reduction in labor cost. You only need one worker to remove a cover. If anybody's been out there in the field, they have to take a big, heavy iron cover off that's been in for a few years. It takes a little bit of work. That picture is a great illustration there. We did like a little product demo down around Allentown, Pennsylvania, a year or so back, and this was one of the municipal engineers. She was just so impressed on how light a manhole cover can weigh, so she had her colleague take that picture there. Just to give you an example, I think recently I think our New York DOT cover is right around 220 pounds, the iron one. But we do have a composite one that will fit that frame, and it weighs about 60 pounds. And is traffic rated. I'll get into that here in a little bit. Some of the other advantages: non-conductive. That's something else we're starting to target some of my DOTs. Every DOT has somewhere in their system, they've got junction boxes or pull boxes, a lot of which has to be tethered with a grounding strap. With a composite cover, you don't have to do that. They're non-conductive. Non-corrosive. I mentioned being along the coast. If you got high salt content or problems with high hydrogen sulfide, a lot less corrosive than other materials. No signal interference. A lot of municipalities or utilities need to mount something on the underside of the cover to monitor what's going on inside their structure. With the iron, sometimes that could interfere with that wireless signal that's going through. You're not going to get that problem with the composite. Noise dampening. I mentioned safety earlier. Perfect solution for areas that are hard to access. And lastly, no scrap value. Why is that a benefit? Well, if you work with a municipality, you notice anytime scrap prices are going up, you're usually calling us or one of our friendly competitors because you got manhole covers missing out there in the field. So people aren't going to get any money back out of a composite cover. I mentioned the traffic rating. Our heavy duty composite covers are rated H25. We use the AASHTO M306 proof load test standard. And then beyond that, they're fatigue tested using a 16,000 pound load for 2 million cycles. It takes probably about 29 or 30 days to do that test, but they are tested for fatigue. And then after that test, there's no sign of cracks or any problems like that. We have different locking options available. Let's see what else. Make sure I don't run out of time here. I just got a couple minutes left here. One of the things we're seeing a big need for is retrofit covers. As we're presenting this product, we're getting a lot of questions. People starting to think about different locations that these could come in handy, whether it's ergonomics, easy access, or whatever. They start asking, can we just put these in an existing frame instead of ripping out, the entire structure? And in a lot of cases, we can do that. I mentioned New York DOT. We have a composite cover that fits that frame. I know we're in a venue here with Connecticut. I know I found out recently we do have a composite cover that will fit the new Connecticut DOT standard, the 38-inch cover. So this is another benefit that people are seeing with composites, just being able to retrofit into an existing frame. Let me see, I may not have time for this video, But where I showed you earlier on our website, if you can go into that third tab over under Resource Center, go to videos, you'll find this video, how it's made. So that's a big difference with the composite frames and covers is, you know, if you're gonna, you see this meets a lot of needs for your municipality, or if you're an engineer designing something for somebody, one of the things you want to think about is it's a composite, you know, it's kind of a generic term, you know, who's making it, how's it made, what type of loading requirements does it fit, what type of, you know, fatigue resistance will it withstand. So a lot of this comes down to how it's specified. Let me jump past this and just conclude with the last section real quick. If we have time, we can play it, but if not, like I said, that video is available on our website. Okay, 11:48. I got to land this ship here pretty quick. Detectable warning plates. I just want to talk about this real quick. I'll just make this real short. The bottom line is, I mentioned AASHTO N306 a couple of times. That's the standard specification for drainage, sewer, utility, and related castings. That's the guideline that pretty much our entire industry follows whenever we're designing and producing our castings. Whenever you look through the ADAG requirements or the PROAG technical requirements, it's the same definitions in terms of what exactly is a detectable warning. They're defined primarily by these three things here: dome size, the dome spacing, and the contrast requirements. And then there's some other particulars as far as like where to place them, things like that. But as you go through those standards, there's really no performance guidelines. There's no material requirements. That's why if you look at a lot of the state DOT approved materials list, you go to the detectable warning section and you'll have a whole bunch of choices. Because really all the manufacturer has to do is adhere to the ADA guidelines. You know, do I have the right dome size, shape, spacing? Do I have the contrast requirements? And then pretty much you're good to go. And you're ADA compliant off the shelf. But then what happens when you put them in the ground, you know, depending on the material, it can become an issue. So you kind of get the point here. I think we're coming to the end, so I'm just going to click through just to get to the bottom line.
Greg, you got about 5 minutes you can use up.
Okay. So the bottom line is because of the ADA requirements, there's a lot of different materials, a lot of different producers that do have something available. Obviously at EJ, we have an iron, cast iron detectable warning system available. We're not the only ones. There's other ones in our industry that also makes iron. So that's the whole point I'm getting at here. There's really no performance guidelines. There's no material specification in the ADA requirements. So just to give you some examples, you know, well, who addresses performance? It basically comes down to the owner, you know, or whoever's specifying it. Just to give you some examples here, you know, going up in New England, you know, where they get a lot of snow plows. A lot of these states have really looked into this, and some have done their own studies. New Hampshire DOT has a study out. Vermont has a study out. I think some other ones has some studies out, and they're all determining the same thing. There's a lot of materials out there, but what do we want to put in our roadways that's gonna, you know, it isn't cheap to put in a curb ramp. So we want to make sure that whatever material we use, we're not going to find out in 6 months after a snowplow hit it that now we're out of compliance because we got half the domes missing. So New Hampshire DOT, I believe that's Maine. Like I said, I got my little banner across the top there. At the top, Vermont, they're all cast iron only. Rhode Island DOT is cast iron only. More recently, the city of Boston, Massachusetts is cast iron only. And we have had some initial conversations with MassDOT. I think they're currently going through their details and updating them. I'm not sure what direction they're going to go, but they are aware of all this. One of the questions that they had was, let's see if oops, I'll skip that. But anyway, it's something they're looking into. So, and then here's a little poster that New Hampshire DOT put out after their study. A lot of information about the different materials and the durability or lack thereof. But the conclusion, the bottom line is, as you can see there in the lower left of this poster, cast iron panels. Says a natural finished cast iron product is not recommended for New Hampshire DOT projects. The highway industry has a long history with the industry of cast iron products. That history, coupled with the lack of a surface coating to wear out, makes this product a good candidate for success. So again, that's the whole point here. You know, whenever you're putting products in the ground in your municipality, you know, you want them to perform, you know, and usually whatever it is has to conform to some sort of a performance standard. And if that doesn't really exist in the ADA guidelines, again, it really comes down to the owner or the specifier to look at what's out there. And that's really how you address performance and longevity of these types of products in your curb runs. And lastly, how am I doing, Tom? A couple more minutes, or are we about out?
I don't have any questions in the chat. We can, if you got a moment to pause right here, we could just ask the group if there's any questions. Go ahead and unmute yourself and get them asked. Otherwise, Craig, you got a couple minutes you could try to eat up before we close it up.
Yeah, this is the last section here. So looks like there's a 2 up there by the chat. Does that mean we have questions? Let's see here.
I don't have any new
Okay, I don't see
new
anything.
items in the chat.
All right, well then I will go ahead and conclude. I just wanted to hear somebody trying to chime in.
Nope.
Okay. All right, I'll just conclude with this section, modernizing municipal specifications. This is one of the things that I deal with quite a bit as I'm talking to the DOTs in my region and different municipalities. One of the ways we've grown quite a bit over the years is acquiring a lot of different companies here in the United States and overseas. And in my territory specifically, I'll just mention LeBaron Foundry. If anybody's heard of them, up from Brockton, Massachusetts, we acquired them back in 2008. So there was a lot of years there where, you know, we're still dealing with a lot of old legacy specifications. That's, you know, specifying the LeBaron Foundry part. And we used to double label some of those castings with the EJ number along with the old LeBaron number. But there's a lot better ways to make castings. And if you have an old legacy spec out there, that one of the big problems is, you know, it gives you the material requirement, and then it tells you have to conform to some sort of a weight spec. You know, if frame and cover must be a combined 700 pounds or whatever, but nobody can really tell you why that is. But if you do a little digging, it really comes down to, you know, you go back 50 or 60 or 70 years, it's whatever local foundry was making those standards at the time, whatever it looked like, whatever it weighed, that pretty much became the standard. So like I said, we conform to AASHTO M306, which is a standard specification for drainage, sewer, utility, and related castings. Oops. I don't know how I'm going backwards again. Sorry, clicking the wrong button. So here's a good example, and I'm starting to see, you know, where the specs are updated. Their standards, for the most part, say something to this effect: all gray and ductile iron castings must conform to AASHTO M306-10. For the most part, that's pretty much all you need. A lot of them will go on and add some other details, which is really covered by AASHTO M306. And as you go through this standard, if you're familiar with, you know, a lot of the legacy specs require conformance to ASTM A48. They want either class 30 or class 35 gray iron. Well, this is your ASTM A48, and it's part of the requirements of AASHTO M306, and they specify class 35 gray iron. Same with AASHTO M105. That's just AASHTO's version of the ASTM A48. And then the ASTM A536 standard spec for ductile iron castings. all of those are incorporated within AASHTO M306. So it's a very simple way to update those standards. And I'll just, yeah, and I think we're pretty much out of time, but there's a lot of reasons for that. Like I said, manufacturing castings better. Just going back to ergonomics, environmental responsibility, saving, time off of work for back injuries. There's better ways to make castings. I'll just give one example here. This is an old style Western Pennsylvania standard, used to weigh 243 pounds, and it maxed out on a proof load test at 62,000 pounds. Now we make it only weighs 168 pounds, so it's a lot easier to handle, but it takes another 40,000 pounds or so to break that cover. So there's a lot of other examples I can give you, but stackability with frames, nest in them. There's a lot more you could fit on a truck. Reduces carbon emissions, a lot less transportation. So anyway, I know we're out of time. I appreciate everybody's time. I know I skimmed through that last section, but I'm here. I could address any questions now, or if Tom and the folks wanted to send me any questions later, I'll be more than happy to address those. But thank you so much, everybody, for your time, and I appreciate it. Tom, Regina, back to you.
Thanks a lot, Craig. Appreciate everybody coming today for Craig's session. If you wouldn't mind, here's that QR code I was referring to at the beginning of the session. This will take you to a real brief survey to make sure we did a good job for you today and what you're looking for in the future. So thanks everybody for coming. We got about a half a minute left. If anybody has any pertinent questions for Craig, other than that, feel free to email myself or Regina, and we can get your questions over to Craig for future response. So thanks everybody. Appreciate you coming out today.